Hi, my name is Jim. I'm the owner of Wasatch Home Inspections, and I provide home inspection services and radon measuring services all up and down the Wasatch Front in northern Utah. I've decided to make a video today to refute some common misconceptions that I've run into just in the last couple of weeks. I was doing a presentation on radon and a couple other subjects the other week, and I ran into some misconceptions that were egregious, really. And so I thought I might be able to make a video and actually close the gap between, on one hand, the scientists who are convinced that radon is dangerous for your health, and the common home buyer that just wants to make sure their family is safe. So that's the role I'm playing here. I'll leave the discussion and the argument whether or not it's dangerous for you up to other people. But if you watch this next 15-minute video, you will understand a whole lot more about how radon behaves, how it gets into your home environment, and how it might be dangerous to your health, so that you're not swept up in the common misconceptions that you also will run into. You see, when I do a home inspection, I'm always asked about radon. People say, well, what about radon? Well, here's about radon. So if you start a discussion about radon, you really have to start with uranium. The symbol on the periodic table for uranium is U, and U is radioactive, as a lot of people know. Uranium is mined for the nuclear power industry, and it is radioactive. A lot of the uranium was mined around the Four Corners area of the western United States, you know, where Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, and Utah meet. And I'm told that a lot of the miners were Native Americans, and their health suffered as a result of handling radioactive uranium for many years. Many of them met their early demise from handling uranium. So uranium is dangerous. It's radioactive. It is radioactive like this. It sends out alpha particles. The atoms of uranium send out alpha particles, and those alpha particles are the radioactive substance that can do you damage. Now, what is an alpha particle? An alpha particle is comprised of a packet of 2 protons and 2 neutrons. That's an alpha particle. And it sends them off. That's the radiation. Now, if you remember back to high school chemistry, uranium has a weight or a mass of 238. Now, what that number represents is the number of particles in its nucleus. There are 238 protons and neutrons. The amount of each doesn't matter for this discussion. 238 is radioactive, sends off an alpha particle, which is comprised of 2 protons and 2 neutrons. So that 238 number changes to 234. 234 now is a new element. It's no longer uranium. Let's leave it unnamed for now, because it's not terribly important, mostly because it's not terribly dangerous to you. 234 is also radioactive. It sends off alpha particles, again comprised of 2 protons and 2 neutrons. 234 becomes a new number, becomes 230. This is a new element, and 230 has its own name, not terribly important, not terribly dangerous. The next one is important and dangerous and interesting. So 230 sends off alpha particles, and 230 now becomes 226. This is where a little bit of fame comes in, because you may not know the name radium, or you might, but you might remember the name Madame Curie. Madame Curie was a Polish scientist who moved to France and met her husband Pierre, and together they ran a lab there, and they isolated, discovered radium. And as a matter of fact, their work was dedicated to the discovery and, the discovery of radiation and elements that were radioactive. And as a matter of fact, radium was used in the past to light up, dials of watches, and they would light up in the dark. My gosh, now that we know about radiation, we wouldn't use radium for that anymore, but in the early days they were doing this. Madame Curie discovered radium along with her husband in 1898, and soon thereafter won the Nobel Prize for their work with discovering radiation and radioactive elements. Now, radium, as I said, is radioactive. it also sends off alpha particles. And by the way, alpha particles are the ones that do damage to our DNA. They're like short-range weapons. They actually, an alpha particle can only travel less than 3 inches, and they can't even penetrate a piece of paper. So they don't sound very harmful, but we'll get it back to that in a bit. Radium is radioactive. Just ask Madame Curie. So let's review just a bit. Uranium is down in the ground. Actually, a lot of people don't know this, but uranium is a metal. My advice is to stay away from uranium. Don't mine it. You'll be fine. Radium. A lot of people don't know this. Radium is a metal. My advice is don't start up a lab and start handling it like Marie Curie. You'll be fine. Now this is where it becomes interesting, because 226 gives off an alpha particle. It becomes 222. This is radon. This is the middle of the story. I've got the rest of the story going up here. Radon is radioactive. As a matter of fact, it sends off alpha particles. But radon in itself is not terribly dangerous to you, and here's why. It spins off alpha particles, but radon, unlike these two metals, radon is a gas. And as a matter of fact, that's how it transports into your home. It's a gas. It transports in and makes its way through the cracks in your slab and foundation and gets into your living environment. Now radon is a gas. It can be breathed in and it can be expelled. No big deal. Now radon is giving off alpha particles that damage your DNA, but what are the chances that when you breathe in radon that an alpha particle is given off? Maybe now and then, so it's not terribly harmful. But the harm comes in the next chapter of the story, because radon 222 gives off an alpha particle, and the new number is 218, which also is radioactive, and the new number is 214, which is also radioactive, and the new number is 210, which is also radioactive. They are all giving off alpha particles. They are alpha emitters, so they're radioactive. These, 210, 214, 218, are the dangerous ones. They have the name polonium. Now guess what? Madame Curie, Marie Curie, was Polish. She wanted to live her life out in Poland. She was dedicated to Poland, and during those years, in the late 1800s, Poland was broken up into 3 different countries. She was a severe nationalist. She believed and had a lot of national pride and wanted to see the day when Poland would once again have its own borders and its own country back. Well, she said she was being very oppressed educationally as a woman and as a citizen of a nation that was oppressive. So she got enough money together and moved off to France to get her education, where there was a little more freedom of education. She always thought she would return to Poland and join the movement to make Poland a country again. She never did, really. She stayed in France, married Pierre, and they were off and running, having a lab. Now they were, I don't know, maybe it's not fair to say, but they were a bit like introverts, or they were very, very, very dedicated scientists. They did not like the spotlight, they didn't like fame, but they got it. Because around the turn of the century, they discovered, through radium and polonium, they discovered radiation. Now, polonium was named by Madame Curie after her home country of Poland. She thought that if she gave it the name polonium, that it might cause a little, it might be a cause for a little nationalistic pride that could go a long way. Now, I mentioned that Pierre and Marie were not, they didn't like the spotlight, but they got the spotlight big time. Because when they discovered and did their work in this, they got the Nobel Prize. And as a matter of fact, soon thereafter, Pierre met his death. He fell under a cart and died. So Madame Curie was, carried on the mantle. As a matter of fact, she did a whirlwind tour of the United States in which she was a rock star. She was famous. She got a lot of media press and attention for this work in radiation. It did her a lot of good, raised her a lot of funds, and before too long she was working out of a pretty classy lab where before it was just sheds and buildings. Now polonium is where the danger comes in, because polonium is, I'm going to call it metal-like. It's like a metal. And so whereas we started out with metal, changed into metal, changed into gas, which transports it into your home, back to metal. And as a matter of fact, so this is how it works. The radium becomes radon, comes into your home, you live with the radon in your home, and then it changes into polonium. Polonium is metal-like. When you breathe in the radon, it gives off polonium. Now the metal, polonium, sticks in your lungs, and it continues to emit alpha particles which go into your lungs and damage your DNA. So polonium got some fame in the last 10 years because there was a Russian dissident who was saying some bad things about Vladimir Putin, and he is convinced on his deathbed that he was poisoned with polonium-210. As a matter of fact, they have isolated the restaurant where he got it, where he met with a couple people, and within 3 weeks he was dead, and he knew that he had been gotten to. So polonium has gotten some fame in the dark world recently. So this story isn't finished, because this whole story describes the uranium series decay chain. It starts with uranium, and it has one more step. 210 decays and sends with the sending off of an alpha particle to 206, which is lead. Lead is stable, it's non-radioactive, and so that's the end of the story of the uranium decay chain series. But along the way, it transports as a gas, it lodges in your lungs as polonium, and as a matter of fact, the National Science Foundation, the National Institute of Health, the EPA, all are publicly in agreement that radon is the leading cause of cancer for non-smokers. Have you ever heard of somebody having cancer complications, lung cancer complications, and they've never smoked in their life? The common misconception, I think, is that people always say, well, it's secondhand smoke. Not so fast. It very easily could be radon. So that's the story. Now, common misconception which I ran into recently. A person said, I know a little bit about science. I know how alpha particles behave. They only travel a maximum of 3 inches, and they can't even penetrate a piece of paper. So, what's at the bottom of your house? 3 or 4 inches of concrete. How can it get through that? Can't even get through a piece of paper. Well, here's a good analogy, I think. You know these party snaps? These party snaps are a good analogy for an alpha particle. So, if their lifespan, well, they can only go 3 inches, and their lifespan is way, 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 way less than a second. It's not that an alpha particle is coming through the crack in your slab, breathing it in, and it goes bang. It's not like that. Its lifespan is so short. But it is alpha particles spinning off of polonium, which is stuck in your lungs, which is the problem. So, let's start with this. This guy is uranium. He's radioactive. He's sending off these alpha particles, and the minute he does, he changes. Take him out of the picture, come up to this guy. This guy's radon. He's sending off alpha particles. Never live. Okay? He sends off an alpha particle. He's no more. Now we have a new guy. He's gray. He's polonium. He goes in. He sticks in your lungs. And this is why it's a good analogy. Can you imagine this guy sticking in your lungs, emitting alpha particles? Now it's harming your DNA within your lungs. Now that's beyond my pay grade, and that's an argument for other people, but it is a very good analogy, I think, to the radon story. I hope this video has helped you, and you will be able to be a non-participant in some of the common misconceptions out there regarding radon and how it's harmful to you. Now you know the path, you know a lot more about it, I hope. Again, my name is Jim, Wasatch Home Inspections, and I hope you've benefited from this video. Thanks for watching.